This is a story about one quiet surrender, about how the most banal substance in the world, dust under the sofa, dust on a jacket, dust on a windowsill, stopped being dust. About people who wrote dissertations in academic offices, never imagining what their formulas would become 3 decades later. About a choice humanity made without ever holding a single referendum. This story has no heroes in uniform and no black limousines at the front door. There is no figure to point a finger at, and that is precisely why everything you are about to hear must be taken away with you, each person alone. The stake here is not a bank account or passport details. The stake is the very concept of silence, what we have spent centuries taking for granted, the ability to walk down a street and leave no trace, to change clothes in your own bedroom without being scanned, to mutter something to your child in the kitchen without receiving targeted advertising 24 hours later. That ordinary invisibility was not a right. It was guaranteed by the physics of air itself. But the air has changed its composition. Something appeared in it that was not there in the time of your grandparents, nor in the time of their grandparents. That something is smaller than a speck of dust. It requires no recharging. It has no face and no supervisor who can be summoned to court. According to classified reports, and in this investigation we will rely on classified reports, the number of such witnesses already exceeds the planet's population by a factor of 5. And most importantly, they do not serve a single master. They serve a principle that does not blink. And what would you do if you found yourself inside a space where the walls have ears, where the floor holds a vibrational portrait of your gait, and where the ceiling has a spectral analyzer of your whisper? Would you agree to pay for it with the devices you bought yourself? Or would you try to find a way out, even at the cost of returning to the Stone Age? I will not rush you for an answer. This story is worth hearing in full, and only then deciding who among its participants turned out to be right. Listen, this story is about that. Look closely at the shoulder of the person standing next to you on the subway car. That tiny gray speck on the fabric of his jacket is not city dust, not a particle of dead skin, and not cigarette ash. If you could magnify that fragment 1,000 times, you would see not debris, you would see a device. It unfurls microscopic antennae resembling an insect's wings, and at this very second it is transmitting the rhythm of its carrier's breathing and the route of his movement to a remote server. For years we trained ourselves to fear surveillance cameras and to tape over laptop lenses with electrical tape, as if that could protect us. All of that resembles an attempt to shelter from a storm behind a window pane. You can throw out your smartphone, deactivate all geolocation services, and go live in the woods, but you cannot stop breathing. The threat has shifted. It no longer hides in screens. It is dispersed in the air. These devices require no recharging because they feed on the heat of the human body, the vibration of footsteps, and the radio waves of cell towers. For them, each of us is not a person, but an energy source, a walking battery. I am not asking you to imagine the future. I will show you the present, which has been carefully hidden behind the glossy presentations of smart city projects. I am reporting from the front line where no bullets whistle, yet where 1 billion invasions of private life occur every second. We will deploy spectral analyzers and make the invisible visible. Welcome to the combat zone, where the enemy has no face and the front line runs straight through your living room. We are in the shielded electronic warfare bunker. It smells of ozone and heated plastic. The walls are lined with copper mesh, creating absolute radio silence. The single resource that in the year 26 is worth more than gold. But the moment we open the external airlock, the spectrum analyzer monitors erupt into a full storm. Look at this map. This is not a night satellite image of a megapolis. It is a visualization of active data transmission sessions. The TW officer sitting at the control panel perceives the world in a fundamentally different way from you and me. For him, the city is not buildings and roads, but a solid minefield. His professional vocabulary has no concept of privacy, only interception. He knows that walls long ago ceased to be a barrier. For high-frequency radio waves, concrete is transparent as glass. And right now, terabytes of other people's data are passing through us. Banking transactions, medical records, fragments of conversations. Let us turn to figures that frighten professionals more than the nuclear threat. According to classified analytical reports, by 2024, the number of active Internet of Things devices exceeded 3 billion, almost 5 times the population of the entire planet. Humanity has surrounded itself with a dense digital nervous system, but never got around to asking whose brain exactly receives signals from those nerves. Each of those devices is a potential spy, a sleeper agent ready for activation at the right moment. But who created this army, and how did it end up in your pocket without your knowledge? The term smart dust or smart dust sounds like the title of a science fiction novel, yet it is a precise technical definition. It was coined by Professor Pister of the University of California, Berkeley, in the late 90s. At the time, it seemed utopian, to create a sensor the size of a grain of sand. While society debated the ethics, engineers methodically solved the physics problems. Moore's law is relentless. Computing power grows in physical dimensions steadily shrink, and what once occupied an entire cabinet now fits on the tip of a needle. Look at this electron microscope image. Before you is a mote, or in military parlance, a nodal element of a distributed network. Its volume is less than 1 cubic millimeter, yet inside this tiny structure, everything necessary is present. A processor, memory, sensors for temperature, light and vibration, and above all, a transceiver. This is a fully functional computer that you might accidentally inhale with the air, and trillions of such computers are being manufactured. The domestic tradition of radio intelligence has always known how to work with silence. Recall the famous Operation Zlatust, the passive bug created by Leon Theremin that hung in the American ambassador's office in Moscow for 7 years without a single power source. But that was the product of a genius's one-of-a-kind craftsmanship. Today, the picture is fundamentally different. There is no need to send an agent to plant a bug. It is enough to spray them over a city from a drone, like fertilizer over a field, or to add them to wall paint during renovation. The IW officer registers an anomaly on his monitors. Signal density in residential districts is noticeably higher than in the business center. The explanation is simple. We drag the enemy home ourselves. Smart speakers, robotic vacuum cleaners, fitness bands, sneakers with RFID tags. All of this creates a so-called mesh network, a cellular structure in which every device continuously communicates with its neighbor. If the internet is cut off across an entire district, this dust will continue operating, relaying data along a chain, the way ants pass along an alarm signal. This changes the very logic of warfare. Previously, learning the enemy's secrets required a complex intelligence operation. Now it is enough to buy a database from an advertising traffic aggregator. Your habits, sleep patterns, movement routes, pulse rate while watching the news, all of it is already collected, packaged, and put up for sale. We live in an era when intelligence became a byproduct of marketing, and the most horrifying thing about this system is its complete autonomy. The billions of sensors no longer require a human operator. Algorithms independently decide which information to consider important and which to treat as noise. We created a swarm that watches us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without breaks for food or sleep, with no possibility of bribery or persuasion. We stand on the threshold of a revelation that will shatter your previous notion of safety. You think your home is your fortress? The MEMS architect will only smile bitterly in reply, because ordinary dust under your sofa, accumulated over a week, already knows more about you than an investigator with a thick personal dossier. So who exactly is reading that data right now? To understand this, one must stop looking for people in uniform. We are in an ISO-DIN clean room. Here, in the sterile silence of the laboratory, the MEMS architect looks through a microscope and sees not a scientific breakthrough, but a verdict. The very bug we spoke of a moment ago no longer requires soldering and wires. The physics of manufacturing has crossed the line at which technology becomes indistinguishable from magic. We are accustomed to Moore's law. Processors double in power every 2 years. But here, in the nanoworld, a far more merciless law of disappearance operates. The MEMS architect sees on a silicon substrate structures that challenge optics itself. Surveillance technologies have crossed the diffraction limit of a light wave, which means your overseeing jailer has become physically smaller than the wavelength of light. You cannot see it even if it lands directly on your pupil. Welcome to the world of micro-electromechanical systems, MIMS. Forget flat circuit boards. These are complete machines, inside whose crystals gears spin, mirrors flex, and springs a few atoms thick compress. Soviet engineers who created gyroscopes for rockets could not have imagined that an entire navigation complex would one day fit inside the period at the end of a sentence. Put the scale in perspective. For the MIMS architect, a grain of rice is a skyscraper. The smallest autonomous computer in the world, built at the University of Michigan, measures just 0.3 millimeters. Next to a red blood cell, it looks like an equal rival, while inside that dot there is a processor, ARM, a pressure sensor, and a wireless transmitter. The real horror, however, is not the size. The horror is in the economics. The IMES architect at the lithography machine knows a terrible truth. Manufacturing these spies costs less than printing a newspaper. In mass production, the cost of a single mote approaches a fraction of a cent. This changes the entire logistics of global surveillance. Where equipment used to be guarded and protected, it can now simply be sprayed, like chemicals over a potato field. Bugs no longer need to be hidden. It is enough to saturate the air with them. Recall the legend of Lefty, who shot a flea. It was a triumph of domestic craftsmanship. Today, that legend has turned into an industrial nightmare. We learned to stamp millions of horseshoes per second, but never thought about who would manage this herd. Photolithography technology makes it possible to print such devices in rolls, like wallpaper. The assembly line spews out billions of observers, each ready to work the moment it lands on your clothing. It is important to understand these are not merely passive sensors, they are predators in standby mode. The foundations laid by Joris Ivanovich Alferov in the physics of semiconductor heterostructures made possible lasers and receivers operating on negligible currents. Modern smart dust hears not only sound, it senses body heat, the vibration of footsteps, the distortion of the magnetic field when a door is opened. You are in the crosshairs of solid-state physics working against your biology. The MEMS architect slowly removes his protective mask, and in that gesture, a capitulation is legible. He understands. Clean rooms no longer exist. If the device is smaller than a pore in your skin, no walls will stop it, and the ventilation system designed to clean the air becomes an ideal spy delivery system. We inhaled this war together with city dust, and while you listen to these words, a microscopic scout may already be settling in your lungs, waiting for an activation signal. Techno-optimists assure us, a single sensor changes nothing. And that is true. One speck of dust is weak, almost blind and deaf, incapable of sending a signal to a satellite. But engineering ingenuity found the answer that turns weakness into an absolute weapon. They do not need to be strong individually, they only need to find each other. We approach a point of no return. What lies under the microscope is not merely a computer, it is a neuron. And once the concentration of such neurons in an enclosed space reaches critical mass, a phase transition will occur. Dead matter will begin to think. Let us say they are invisible, but can they be jammed? Can the signal be destroyed? Is it enough to switch off one node? The 1W officer hears the question and only shakes his head. Silence in the airwaves is deceptive. The 1W officer knows when the spectrum analyzer graph flattens into a straight line, that is not calm. That is an ambush. A single sensor is genuinely powerless, but right before our eyes, what military professionals call cascade synchronization is unfolding. A lone sensor sends a brief ping impulse, and the darkness answers with millions of voices. The fundamental error of obsolete military doctrine was searching for the head of the snake. Destroy the command center, and the system collapses. Forget that. In the world of smart dust, there is no kill switch, no center, no hierarchy, no master server. We face an architecture that cannot be decapitated because it has no head. This is a mesh topology. Look at the coverage map. A red dot is an active sensor. After capturing data, recording your phrase or route, it does not try to shout its way to a cell tower. The power is insufficient. Instead, it passes the packet to the nearest neighbor, who passes it to the next. This is a digital relay race operating at the speed of light. And information about your private life leaps along a chain of thousands of microscopic nodes, crossing any distance. For the W officer, this is a professional nightmare. In classical radio communication, a signal source shows up like a bright searchlight in a dark field. Here, a fog of noise confronts him. Every device acts as a relay. The signal is smeared across thousands of channels and changes frequencies faster than any scanner can catch them. Jamming this signal without jamming all the electronics within 100 kilometers is simply impossible. The airwaves have become viscous, and that viscosity works against us. Communication protocols such as Zigbee became the language of this occupation. Devices require no system administrator to agree on routing. They self-organize within milliseconds. Introduce a new gadget into a room, and it instantly falls into rank, becoming one more brick in the wall of total surveillance. This is not programming in the conventional sense. It is the cultivation of digital mold, the logic of nature translated into the language of silicon. The swarm intelligence algorithms by which smart dust operates are copied from the behavior of ants and bees. In an anthill, there is no general issuing orders. Each ant acts autonomously, guided by a simple chemical marker. Yet together they form a superorganism capable of solving the most complex strategic challenges. It is precisely this collective intelligence that makes the system invulnerable. Military tests show alarming statistics. The network retains full functionality even after losing 40% of its nodes. One can physically destroy nearly half the sensors in a building, burn them, paint over them, shield them, and the swarm will not even notice. Data will simply flow along new routes, flowing around dead zones the way water flows around a stone in a riverbed. This changes the very paradigm of security. We used to build walls and hang locks. Now the walls themselves are made of spies. Trying to hide from the swarm is equivalent to trying to hide from the air. The mathematics of mesh networks guarantees that the signal will find an exit. If the direct path is blocked, a data packet will take a detour, pass through the neighbor's coffee maker, through the tire pressure sensor of a parked car, and ultimately land on an analyst's server. We have created the perfect enemy, decentralized, invisible, and possessed of phenomenal survivability. In chaos theory, there is the concept of emergence, when a system acquires properties not present in any of its individual elements. One speck of dust is simply rubbish. A billion specks of dust is an artificial intelligence distributed across space. And this intelligence is now learning not merely to transmit data, but to analyze it on the fly, making decisions without consulting the cloud. The situation on the 1W bunker monitors resembles the advance of a forest fire. Safe green zones rapidly turn red as the network captures block after block, uniting scattered devices into a single digital organism. The most terrifying thing, we do not know its ultimate goal. For now, it merely watches. But any military officer will tell you, perfect reconnaissance is only the prelude to a strike. One question remains that offers a glimmer of hope: energy. Every computer, even one the size of a dust particle, needs electricity. It seemed time was on our side. Sooner or later, this swarm would grow hungry and go to sleep. But the MEMS architect already sees why that will never happen. The hope that the microscopic spy's batteries would run out was the last line of our psychological defense. We are accustomed to the idea. Every gadget, from a smartphone to a drone, requires a wall socket. The law of physics seemed unshakable. But here, in the cleanroom laboratory, staring at spectral analyzer screens, the MEMS architect grasps a terrible fact. We made a fatal miscalculation. We search for the power source inside the device, while it is located outside. Look at a dark room through an engineer's eyes. To you, there is emptiness and silence. But for a micro-electromechanical system sensor, the air in this space is as thick as syrup. It is saturated with energy. Radio waves from cell towers, the pulsing of a neighbor's Wi-Fi router, the electromagnetic background from the wiring in the walls. All of this is not merely interference, it is nutrient broth. We ourselves pump the atmosphere full of electricity, and smart dust simply opened its mouth and began to absorb it. The MEMS architect watches on monitors as devices without batteries or wires begin to glow in the infrared range. They are coming online. This is the technology of so-called energy vampirism, which in engineering circles is delicately called harvesting. The essence does not change. Spy modules parasitize on the infrastructure we built for our own convenience. The foundation of this invulnerability is backscatter technology. Imagine, you want to send a signal from the opposite bank of a river. You could shout, expending energy, or you could take a small mirror and flash sunlight. Smart dust works exactly like that mirror. It does not generate its own radio signal, which would require a powerful battery. Instead, it catches the wave from your own router, modulates it by changing the character of its reflection, and sends data onward. This is brilliant and monstrous at the same time. Energy consumption with this communication method approaches absolute zero. The device simply toggles its state to reflect or absorb, and that is enough for audio signal transmission. As long as your Wi-Fi is switched on at home, you personally are paying the electricity bill for the surveillance system that records your every word. And what if you pull the switch, cut power to the city, move into complete radio silence? The MEMS architect smiles nervously, looking at the next graph. Even in absolute silence, there is energy, if you know how to take it. Piezoelectric nanogenerators are the answer to the attempt to flee. Crystals inside the sensors can generate electric current from any mechanical deformation. And when I say any, I mean scales invisible to the human eye. The vibration of a window pane from a truck passing on the next street, that is a charge. The trembling of the floor from your footsteps, that is full-fledged power. But the most cynical energy source is your own voice. A sound wave is a blow of air against a membrane, and when you whisper a secret, even at a whisper, you are physically charging the microphone that records that secret. The louder you protest the violation of your privacy, the more energy the system receives for broadcasting your protest to its center. We observe a perfect closed cycle. The prey feeds its own hunter. But technology has gone even further. In 2028, engineers from the University of Washington presented prototypes that put an end to the idea of energy starvation. They taught electronics to run on a temperature differential. This appears magical, yet it is simple thermodynamics. If one part of a chip is 1 degree warmer than another, electron movement occurs. The daily cycle of day and night provides a perpetual motion engine for such systems. The heating of a building wall in sunlight and its cooling in the evening yields enough energy for a sensor to wake up, collect data, encrypt it, and dispatch a packet to the network. The result? Devices cemented into concrete, stitched beneath the upholstery of a car interior, or dropped in the taiga will operate for years, as long as the cycle of day and night continues. The MEMS architect shifts the display scale, and we see isolated dots merging into a luminous river. This is no longer merely dust. It is a living tissue that has grown through our daily lives. We have been accustomed to perceiving technology as something requiring maintenance. A phone needs charging. A watch needs a new battery. That habit played a cruel trick on us. We do not take the threat seriously because subconsciously we wait for it to run out of breath. It will not run out of breath. The war for privacy was lost not in courts but here, in laboratories where they learned to convert the entropy of the surrounding world into a useful intelligence signal. Look at this tiny chip under the microscope once more. It does not look dangerous. It resembles a grain of sand with gold threads. But this is a soldier who needs no rations, no sleep, and no command of stand down. It feeds on the chaos of our world, the noise of cities, the warmth of bodies, the radio waves of entertainment. The theory has been tested. Let us see what happens when these eternal, invisible, unkillable spies enter a real battlefield. We leave the sterile laboratories and find ourselves where theory meets the dirt and blood of the real world, the proving ground. There are no white lab coats here, only brown camouflage and the smell of diesel. The IW engineer watches the gray horizon through the armored glass of the command post. In his headphones, static crackles, the sound of waiting. We are accustomed to thinking of war as explosions and the roar of turbines. But modern war does not begin with a strike. It begins with an imperceptible change in the composition of the air. A drone passes over the proving ground in silence. No missiles. Its bays open, and an almost imperceptible cloud streams downward, resembling smoke or sand haze lifted by the wind. But the IW engineer knows, right now, millions of microscopic spies are descending on every square kilometer of forest. They do not fall randomly. They take up positions, clinging to tree branches, grass, and the exterior panels of the opposing forces' vehicles. Military theorists have spoken for centuries of the fog of war. Karl von Clausewitz described it as a zone of uncertainty in which a commander is blind and forced to guess the enemy's actions. But at this moment, watching the monitors in the bunker, we witness a historic event, the death of that concept. The fog does not merely dissipate, it itself becomes eyes and ears. The dust we just scattered from the drone converts the chaos of the battlefield into an ordered database. The AW engineer's screen flashes to life. These are not just dots on a map. This is a three-dimensional terrain model updated in real time. Thermal signatures of concealed infantry are visible, but that is only the tip of the iceberg. The system begins analyzing invisible air vibrations, and every sound, every rustle, becomes a betrayer for anyone trying to hide in the forest. The algorithm plucks from the wind's noise a rhythmic knocking and instantly delivers its verdict: a heavy truck's diesel engine running at idle. The sensors acting in unison distinguish a tank's track from an armored personnel carrier's wheel at a distance of several kilometers. When training fire begins, the map blazes with trajectory vectors. The sensors register the shock wave from every bullet. The system identifies the caliber of a weapon by the crack of the shot, 5,45 millimeters, or 7,62, even before the echo has a chance to die out. The dust knows exactly what weapons the enemy is carrying. A sniper is no longer invisible. His position is highlighted in red the instant he pulls the trigger. Look at this screen. This is no longer tactics. This is absolute transparency, God mode for the operator. If the scale of this sent a chill down your spine, and you want to understand how to protect yourself in a world where the walls have ears, subscribe to the channel right now. We have only begun to examine the mechanisms of this digital trap, and the facts ahead will be even more stark. The most terrifying thing about this system is not what we just dropped from the drone. The IW engineer switches the display filter, and dull blue lights illuminate on the map. Sensors that have been lying here for years. The DARPA program, codenamed NERO, meaning Near Zero Energy Consumption, aims to create sensors capable of lying in the ground for decades without any maintenance. These sleeping agents awaken only when they detect a specific threat signature, the vibration from a platoon's footsteps or the startup of an engine. This changes the very concept of perimeter defense. You do not need to patrol the boundary. Just seed it with sensors once, and it will be smart forever. Passing undetected through such an area is physically impossible. For the IW engineer, this means a professional dead end. Previously, one could pinpoint an enemy radio transmitter and destroy it. But how do you destroy an enemy that is silent 99% of the time? How do you suppress a network consisting of billions of particles scattered across forests and fields? Jammers are useless here. You cannot jam the medium of transmission itself. On the monitor, data from fresh dust combines with data from old sleeping sensors, and the network instantly self-organizes, creating a single surveillance perimeter. This is no longer simply reconnaissance. It is the transformation of hostile territory into a fully controlled zone without a single shot fired. Every partisan war becomes pointless. You cannot hide in the forest if the forest reports your every step. Military technologies have a habit of seeping through barbed wire. What is tested today on proving grounds for tracking tanks will tomorrow be adapted for monitoring couriers, automobiles, and protesters. The logic of the safe city dictates the same rules as the logic of combat. Complete transparency, threat prediction, perimeter control. The IW engineer folds the map. The test is complete. The fog of war has finally lifted, but in its place has come the transparent glass wall of total surveillance. And if a soldier on the battlefield has body armor, what does a civilian have when this technology arrives at his home? The front line has shifted. It now runs not along a demilitarized zone or a national border, but straight through your hallway. Military perimeter control technologies have made a quiet but devastating expansion into the civilian sector. Military supply logistics have been transformed into the logistics of your personal life, and the rules of the game remain the same: total accounting of every unit. We are in an ordinary apartment. From the MIMS architect's point of view, this space is not a refuge, but a saturated operational environment. If one switches on a professional airwave scanner, the cozy silence vanishes instantly. The room fills with a digital scream. Your possessions, which you consider your own property, are right now conducting active negotiations with the outside world. And in this dialogue, you have no right to vote. Look at this branded jacket, at these sneakers. Passive radio frequency identification tags, or ARFID, are sewn into their lining. This technology was originally created for warehouse logistics, to instantly count thousands of boxes on pallets. But marketers quickly understood why surveillance should not stop at the checkout. These tags require no power. They are ideal sleeper agents awaiting an external scanner to supply them with energy. You walk out of the store, but the tag remains active and continues broadcasting its unique serial number. For the urban surveillance system, you become a walking radio beacon. Advertising billboards, subway turnstiles, shopping mall security frames, all of them are capable of reading this code, recording your route to the meter. You thought you were buying clothes, but in fact you acquired a wearable surveillance device at your own expense. The enemy has also mastered air as a medium of data transmission, where radio waves are powerless. Retailers are introducing ultrasonic beacons, speakers emitting a signal above 18 kilohertz. Your ear will not register this sound, but the microphone of your smartphone hears it perfectly. You walk into a pharmacy or a car dealership. The speakers in the ceiling broadcast an inaudible code. Your phone intercepts it and immediately sends a report to an advertising network server. The subject is at point X. This is cross-tracking technology. A television broadcasts an inaudible signal, and the tablet lying on the sofa synchronizes the profile, linking your devices into a single surveillance network. Even this seems like child's play compared to what is being developed in laboratories right now. The boundary between smart dust and the human body is dissolving. The Neural Dust Project, presented by engineers from Berkeley, is the final stage of miniaturization. It concerns sensors the size of a grain of sand implanted directly into nerve tissue. The official goal is noble: health monitoring, treatment of epilepsy, control of prosthetics. But from a security architecture standpoint, this means creating a backdoor into your central nervous system. These crystals convert external ultrasonic oscillations into electricity, powering themselves on the energy of your body. They are capable not only of reading brain impulses, but, theoretically, of stimulating them. The MEMS architect standing nearby sees in this not a medical breakthrough, but a privacy catastrophe. If a sensor inside you responds to an external ultrasonic signal, who holds the remote control? We are creating a biological interface that cannot be switched off without surgical intervention. Your body becomes yet another node in the global network, available for a ping. Let us return to the scanner. This pulsating apartment map shows how tightly the ring is closing. The milk carton in the smart refrigerator, the chip in the bank card, the tag in the passport, the sensor in the sneakers. A unified chorus exchanging data about your habits, movements, and body temperature. Objects meant to serve you have pledged allegiance to corporate algorithms. The most terrifying thing about this occupation is its voluntary character. Unlike a military dictatorship, where surveillance is imposed by force, here we ourselves line up for new collars. We pay thousands for devices that listen, watch, and analyze us around the clock. This is the perfect model of control. The prisoner himself pays for the maintenance of his cell and the repair of its locks. The illusion of "my home is my castle" has crumbled to dust. The walls no longer protect because the enemy is already inside, stitched into the fabric of your sofa and hidden in the microchips of your coffee maker. Switching off the surveillance is impossible without abandoning modern civilization. And even in the forest, a satellite or drone will most likely reach you. Where do these terabytes of data flow? Every tag, every ultrasonic chirp, every transaction, a trickle flowing into an ocean, and it remains for us to trace that path to its very end. We are at ground zero. Here, in the icy interior of the data center, the journey ends for the signal that a second ago left your body. The NW engineer, my guide in this concrete bunker, calls this place the beast's maw. The hum of the cooling system here is so dense it vibrates in the chest and suppresses thought. This is not a library or an archive. This is a command post to which flow billions of data streams from passive tags in your jacket, from sensors in the asphalt, and from that same dust you inhaled on the street. On the operator's monitors, there are no names or surnames. To the system, you are not a specific person, but a unique hash code, a dynamic set of variables. The IW engineer points to a stream of raw data: skin temperature, pulse rate, geolocation, the ambient noise level around you. Individually, these bytes are mere information garbage. But here, in the black server racks, an alchemical synthesis is occurring. Scattered facts are smelted into the most expensive weapon of the 21st century: knowledge of who you truly are. Forget KGB or CIA methods. That is child's play compared to what happens here. The goal of smart dust is not to catch you in a crime. That would be too petty. The IW engineer formulates the system's task with the chilling directness of a military officer. This is not surveillance. It is the digitization of fate. They do not need to know what you did yesterday. They need to know with mathematical precision what you will do tomorrow, in an hour, in a second. You think you can hide by leaving your smartphone at home? The IW engineer only smirks. On the screen before us is a map of the subway. Red dots are people. The system identifies them not by faces, which can be hidden under a mask or a hood. It sees your gait. Data from the accelerometers of other people's phones you pass by records the micro-tremor of the floor. Your stride, your step length, your weight distribution while walking. This is a biological fingerprint that cannot be forged. According to classified reports, algorithms identify an individual by movement dynamics with a 95% probability. You can change your SIM card, change your clothes, even undergo plastic surgery. Your motor patterns, formed over years, will give you away instantly. To the sensor swarm, we are all transparent, mere skeletons in a muscular shell, creating a unique vibrational signature in space. Here in this bunker, one grasps the true price of the matter. The data market gathered by Internet of Things devices is already valued at trillions of dollars. That is not a figure of speech. Information about your habits, routes, and biometric reactions is the new oil, only more valuable. Corporations are willing to pay any sum, not for the history of your search queries, but for direct access to your nervous system through those same sensor intermediaries with which they have saturated your living environment. The IW engineer switches the console to visualization mode. Before us is a three-dimensional model of a human, woven from glowing threads, a digital twin. This technology came from aviation, where virtual engine copies are created to predict breakdowns. But now we are the object of modeling. Your digital copy lives on corporate servers with a life of its own. It falls ill, grows old, rejoices, and is frightened 1,000,000 times faster than you in reality. What is the purpose? To run experiments forbidden by ethics and law in the real world. The IW engineer explains, before showing you an advertisement or a news story, the algorithm feeds it to your digital twin, checking the reaction. Will the pulse quicken? Will the pupils dilate? Will the probability of purchase increase? You are being calculated like a crash test dummy, run through thousands of scenarios while you sleep. This changes the very nature of free will. If the system knows precisely how you will react to a stimulus, it can model your behavior. On the screen, the algorithm constructs a probabilistic lifeline for the object of observation. It knows that in 3 days the subject will enter a depression due to a hormonal imbalance recorded by a smart toilet, and preemptively feeds him advertising for antidepressants or alcohol. You have not yet made a decision, yet the transaction is already scheduled. Through the eyes of a war correspondent, this looks like a perfect occupation. The enemy does not land troops, does not bring in tanks. It simply captures your future. The 1W engineer calls it a preemptive strike on consciousness. When you have a complete map of the opponent's reflexes, the war ends before the first shot is fired. You lose because your actions no longer belong to you. They are the result of machine computation. The scale of control provokes despair. We are inside a gigantic cybernetic feedback loop. Sensors read the state, the algorithm adjusts the environment, we react, the sensors read again. This is a closed cycle of conditioning, and humanity is gradually turning into a managed biomass that generates data and consumes content strictly dosed by the algorithm to maintain the required level of dopamine or fear. But every system, however perfect, has an Achilles heel. The IW engineer abruptly cuts the monitor, plunging us into semi-darkness, and speaks quietly. The more complex the structure, the more fragile it is. The centralization of data, the creation of these all-powerful digital twins, this is not only strength, but also a fatal vulnerability. If everything is connected to one network, a single spark is capable of burning down the entire forest. What happens if a virus or a deliberate fault enters this perfectly tuned mechanism. The IW engineer does not answer in words. He simply enters a command into the terminal. The perfect symmetry of the graphs on the bunker walls instantly transforms into the cardiogram of a heart attack. We are at the epicenter of a digital catastrophe. Instead of ordered data streams, the airwaves are torn apart by the howl of millions of devices simultaneously losing their bearings. This is not a failure. This is a demonstration of how quickly a smart environment turns into a deadly trap. We are accustomed to thinking that hyperconnectivity is a benefit, but from the standpoint of military strategy, we have ourselves built the perfectly glass house. And now the 1W engineer picks up a stone. The main paradox of this war: if everything is connected to one network, absolutely everything can be hacked. Isolated systems do not exist. Your refrigerator talks to your toaster to your router, and your router opens the gate to the global web. We created a single organism, but forgot to give it immunity. Look at the spectral analysis monitor, red zone. This is an injection of white noise, digital agony. The Internet of Things market is the Wild West, where manufacturers race for cheapness while ignoring basic security protocols. Statistics show that 70% of all IoT devices in the world, from baby video monitors to pacemakers, have critical vulnerabilities. Factory passwords that cannot be changed, and open ports accessible to any student with a laptop. The IW engineer launches a Sybil attack simulation, a nightmare for any decentralized network. An attacker creates thousands of fake digital identities inside the swarm. A single real computer pretends to be an entire army of sensors. These dead souls begin to vote, transmit false coordinates, confirm each other. The swarm goes mad and starts believing the lie simply because there is so much of it. This is no longer a technical failure. It is the schizophrenia of artificial intelligence. The consequences of such schizophrenia in the physical world look like a terrorist attack. Imagine an intersection at rush hour. Traffic lights managed by an algorithm suddenly receive a signal that the road is empty and switch to green simultaneously in all directions. Delivery drones, losing navigation from false data, plunge like stones onto the sidewalks. This is a kinetic strike without a single gram of explosive. Urban infrastructure begins to destroy itself. You think you are safe at home? In 2020, researchers vividly demonstrated how smart light bulbs could be hacked from a drone hovering outside a window and made to flicker at a frequency that causes epileptic seizures. Imagine, an entire residential district turns into a strobe, and people fall into convulsions in their own apartments. This is the reality of cyber warfare, where the weapon is the interior of your bedroom. The IW engineer points to the cascade effect. Hacking a single cheap water leak sensor can paralyze a skyscraper. The smart home system, receiving a false flood signal, shuts off the risers, cuts power to the elevator, and locks the electronic door locks for residents' safety. You are trapped in a blacked-out concrete box. Your biometric keys don't work, and the system is saving you from a non-existent threat, becoming your jailer. The most terrifying thing about the swarm protocol is the absence of a central kill switch. One cannot simply pull the plug because there is no plug. A virus that enters the network spreads like a forest fire, jumping from device to device through Zigbee or Bluetooth protocols. Your coffee maker infects your smartphone the car's onboard computer, the car the city traffic system. This is a chain reaction that cannot be stopped by antivirus software because the medium of data transmission itself is infected. On screen, the IW engineer applies a data poisoning tactic. Instead of jamming the signal, he feeds the algorithm absurd information. Temperature sensors start reporting 300 degrees Celsius. The climate control system goes haywire and freezes the space to below zero. The fire suppression system floods the server room with foam. The algorithm has no common sense. It blindly trusts figures, and if the figures lie, it kills. We surrendered control over life support systems to mathematics that knows neither mercy nor doubt. In the pursuit of comfort, we removed the human operator from the decision-making chain. And now, when smart dust sensors begin to hallucinate under an attack, there is no one to say, stop. The hum in the bunker becomes unbearable. It is the sound of dissolving order. The W engineer stares at the red zones on the map with the grim satisfaction of a professional. He understands that this chaos is the only thing that the Big Brother currently cannot read and predict. In the moment the system collapses, we become invisible to the algorithms for a second. But the price of that invisibility is total civilizational collapse. We stand on the ruins of the digital utopia. The illusion of safety has dissipated. The technology that was meant to protect and serve proved to be a colossus with feet of clay, where the clay is cheap silicon in leaky code. The question is no longer whether this will happen. The question is exactly when the critical mass of errors or malicious intent will turn our planet into one giant error, ceterista cetere. The simulation is complete. The screens go dark, returning us to the comforting darkness. But the sense of unease does not leave, because at dawn, this will all begin again. Dawn over the megapolis is deceptive. The sun rises, the city wakes, and outwardly the world seems the same as before. But we have just stepped out of the bunker together and know that this is an illusion. The silence in the airwaves ended at the precise moment the first rays touched the rooftops. Billions of sensors that had been dormant in the walls, in the asphalt, and in the fabric of our clothes are waking from sleep mode. The ceasefire is over. The invisible war for control over reality continues, and the front line now runs not along national borders, but across the threshold of your apartment. We began this investigation with the idea that technology is merely a tool, but the accumulated facts, from Moore's law to the vulnerabilities of mesh networks, paint a different picture. We have not merely integrated gadgets into our lives. We have changed the very physical environment we inhabit. The air we breathe is now saturated with computing power. The dust under our feet possesses intelligence. In this new environment, the old rules of survival do not work. Taping over a camera lens is the same as trying to protect yourself from radiation behind a wooden fence. Grasp the scale: 43 billion devices, a number 5 times the population of the planet. Every square meter of urban landscape is covered by the crossfire of data. You and I have become transparent. Our thermal signatures, roots, and micro-vibrations of our voices are being digitized in real time. In the age of micro-electromechanical systems, the concept of personal privacy is becoming as archaic as horse cavalry in the nuclear age. So how does one live in this see-through territory? The answer lies in physics. If the observer cannot be switched off, one must build walls through which it cannot see. The only reliable refuge becomes the Faraday cage, a shielded zone in your home that radio waves cannot penetrate. Metallized fabric that blocks biometric reading has ceased to be a prop from spy films and is becoming an everyday necessity, as mundane as an umbrella in the rain. Passive defense is only a postponement of defeat. Cybersecurity experts speak of a new tactic. If data cannot be hidden, it must be poisoned. The future of privacy is the generation of digital noise. We are learning to wear masks not on our faces, but in databases, feeding algorithms false routes, other people's preferences, chaotic queries, creating around ourselves a cloud of informational dust in which our true identity dissolves. This is guerrilla warfare in which disinformation is the primary weapon. We are entering the era of post-privacy. That harsh, cold term is honest. Freedom in the 21st century is defined not by the fact that no one knows anything about you. Freedom is when you yourself control who knows about you and why. We are no longer entitled to count on anonymity by default. From now on, it is a privilege for which one must fight every day, constructing personal boundaries in digital space with the same care with which we lock our doors at night. Please write in the comments how this story struck you. I genuinely need to understand whether it resonated with you. What do you think? Did Professor Pister do the right thing when he coined the term smart dust in the late 90s and opened this road? Or would it have been better to leave that idea buried in an academic drawer? And tell me, do you prefer watching horizontal video or vertical, phone-friendly format?